No, StreamYard, I am not ready to go live, but it's time, so we're going live. Welcome, everybody. My name is Margaret Pinard. Thanks for coming by my channel. You are on BookTube. And today we have a little break from May of the Moderns because we're going to look back over April for the wrap of all the April reads. And I've got a good stack in front of me. So welcome. And it's May 4th. So Shannon's here with the epic May the 4th be with you. First to say it on making friends with the like button. So that's pretty cool. Thank you, Shannon. And yeah. So what am I doing differently today for the wrap up of books? I went a little stats crazy. So I don't normally do number wrap ups because that involves math and percentages and ratios and tracking, and that's not as fun as doing the actual reading. So, but this time, I don't know. I guess I thought I would. I was probably procrastinating doing something else. You know it. You know I was. And so I've got this to share my this is how I do my monthly planner. I do the books, oh, there we go, books read right before the next month, so I only do 1 month at a time worth of planning, if that makes sense. So anyway, I got a good crop of books this month and we're ready for May because May is a big month. In case you don't know and you're just stopping by here, I'm running a readathon in May called May of the Moderns, which is about reading books written or published between 1901 and 1945. We've got a Storygraph challenge. We've got a buddy read or solo read sign-up spreadsheet on Google Docs. We've got prizes and giveaways coming at the end of it in June at our party. We've got prompts from celebrity booktubers. We've got little mini lectures on Sundays and reading sprints on Fridays and Saturdays. So lots going on in May. And yeah, I'm going to be on the screen 4 times a week. So get used to that view. Hi, JC. Hello, hello. Thanks for stopping by, saying hello. I hope you guys had a good reading month in April. It was a very good reading month for me. Yeah. So let's just start with those books, shall we? I've got a banner to put up here while I do this and an order to go in to make things somewhat organized. So first book finished. Do I want to do it that way? Yeah, we'll go through the books and then we'll go through the stats. How about that? So the first book I read was a audiobook. Thank you to Libro.fm. And it's called Milltown by Kerri Arsenault. She is a Mainer, someone from Maine, and this was a fantastic book. I would probably recommend reading it in the physical version instead of the audiobook version because I found her accent to be hard to understand at some points. Not necessarily the accent, just how she talked. She swallowed a lot of sounds, and so unless I was listening very, very carefully, I would get frustrated because I would miss things. So go with the paperback. I've put links to all the books that I'm recommending down in the description so you can support bookshops, support indies, since we just had Indie Bookstore Day, and also support great books. So what is this book about? Milltown is about Mexico Rumford town area in Maine, and the history of the town, the history of the industry, which is a paper mill and a lumber mill, the history of the cloud of curses that have accompanied that type of industry, the history of the people who have come there because it's a mixed ethnic group and there's like immigration history in there. We also hear about personal stories and medical traumas and sort of soul searching while she's doing this investigative piece. She also goes into natural histories and like scientific research and like the whole gamut. So it's super interesting. I liked how she blended things together. I really, really enjoyed this book and would recommend it to anyone interested in social histories is what I'll call it because it mostly talks about the past and her growing up. but with indications or implications for the future of policy and advocacy in this area, which is my jam. So really, really appreciated that one. I gave it a 4.25. So there we go. Book number 1. Oh, Shannon's working on making Tears of the Marigolds book cover. Fun, fun, fun. All right. What do we have next after Middletown? We have, let's see, This Lovely City. So this is a carryover from March when I started at the end of the month. This is a historical mystery by Louise Hare that I picked up on my trip to Chicago and Boston. This is new. Got this book new because it was so fantastic looking. It deals with the Windrush generation immediately following World War II. I picked it up thinking it would be historical fiction. It was more of a mystery, so it was a bit different than I expected, but still very well done. Characters well drawn, setting and plot very tightly done, and surprise, Louise Hare is coming out. Is it this week or last week? I can't remember. Around now with another mystery called Miss Aldridge Regrets. So if you were an Agatha Christie fan, I think you would really like her style and her treatment of this novel. So if you look up Louise Hare, she's on Twitter. I like her Twitter a lot. Or Miss Aldridge Regrets, that would be a great new book to try. But also This Lovely City was really cool. It's someone who is a newcomer in London finds a dead infant or toddler, somewhere between the two, in a park and is not guilty, but it's related to his other activities. And so you learn about his life and his hopes and dreams and the people around him and the false accusation and the police hassling and all that. So This Lovely City, I gave 4 stars. So there we go. This is going to be, there's going to be a few of these. I don't know. How many books, let's put this up. How many books did you read in April? And we'll see what I get to by the end of this, right? The next one was my first buddy read that I'll talk about. This is called A Clearing in the Distance, Frederick Law Olmsted and America in the 19th Century by Witold Rybczynski. So I've read a few other of his books. He's a sociologist who likes to dive into history matters and sort of profile a section of society and give us a lot of detail about it. So I saw Brian of Bookish was reading this or had this on a spin or something. And I said, hey, I've been meaning to get this off my TBR for a long time too. I actually hashtagged it Ancient TBR because I'm pretty sure I've had this book for 18 or 19 years. Yes, years. So we're both very glad to be able to get it off of our shelves. And we both had pretty similar frustrations with this book. It's not Rybczynski's best. Brian was more interested in the landscape architecture sort of discipline coming to the fore and becoming an actual industry, and the setting of the 19th century early scene. And I was interested in the stuff I didn't know about his life, but I was expecting more towards the end of his life. It did do a good job of giving us lots of details about Olmsted's life from the early times, his relationship with his father, to all these adventures he had. He's really like a 19th century Renaissance man. And I was like, oh, cool. Bonus, interesting, right? But we both really didn't appreciate the sort of interludes. There's like, I don't know, 7 or 8 italicized short sections where Rybczynski imagines like a scene from Olmsted's life and makes it up like it's a dialogue scene, like a fiction writer would. And it just didn't add much. And we were both kind of like, come on, dude, like not your bailiwick. What are you doing here? So that was a bit weird. But the facts and the findings were good. It was a little bloated, I'll say. It could have been edited down a bit, and I think Brian agrees with me there. And we both sort of thought that Rybczynski was a fanboy of Olmsted's a little more than was warranted. Again, this is a 20-plus-year-old book, but the easy treatment of someone who was a gradualist in the time of slavery, meaning he didn't think that people who were enslaved could handle being emancipated or freed, and so they needed to be gradually led to freedom, is a little strange. So yeah, we were a little less forgiving, but overall interesting details. And for someone who wanted to, write about this character in historical fiction, it would be a great resource. Yeah, so Olmsted, really enjoyed that buddy reading on Voxer with Brian. So that was very cool. Oh, I have some comments to catch up on. Can't wait to see Shannon's cover. JC, these are books written or published between 1901 and 1945. So that's like the modern period that we're looking at. Oh, Marigold's name just fits on the cover differently. Nice. 1901 to 1945. Close enough. Nope. Jane Austen is early 19th century. She's like 1790s to 1810s. So she is about 100 years too soon. Yep. Oh, we're talking about cover design. JD Estrada, missed the sex, but hopping onto this one to say hola. Thanks, JD. Nice to see you. Yeah, he is referring to, and I'll pop it up here once I'm done. He's referring to the mini lectures. So what I mentioned at the beginning is that part of this May readathon includes 5 prompts: sex, race, class, war, end of empire, and other, which is translated works. And so, translated works. Might someone also be interested in that one? So I'm treating each of these on a Sunday, since we have 5 Sundays in May, and doing just a little here are the themes, here are the things that I see in some of the books that people are reading. Does this interest any of you? You might be interested in these books. Let's think about XYZ. So just like the things that I know, the tiny little thimble full of things that I could share with people, I'm going to bring to the fore, and hopefully have a few guests who created the prompts on the Sunday session. So stay tuned for that. Oh no. Okay, so Shannon's answering. I'm looking at the comments. Shannon's answering the question like a good student. She says, I read 9 full books, 40% of another, 72% of another, that's specific, and 47% of a last one. So you've got 3 continuing reads. Nice. Nice segue. Oh gosh, JD. Sweet. Okay, so JD says, I've read The Little Prince in English and Spanish. Lol. Okay, if you notice, there was a graphic about The Little Prince on the thumbnail for this live stream, and that's coming later. And it was really, really good book, so I'm going to recommend it. I hope people stick around to know which one I'm talking about. Or you could just cheat and look down in the description. Okay, so that's 3 books down. The next one was a read-along. So if you don't know, a readathon is when you have a theme, and a day, a weekend, a week, a month, you have a specific amount of time to read books on the theme. A read-along is when you have one book and a bunch of people read it together within a specific amount of time. So slightly different. I participated in the Pachinko along hosted by Gemma of Gem of Books, but Pachinko is a book by Min-Jin Lee, and we've all been buzzing about the trailer. It's going to come out on Apple TV. I think there's going to be a miniseries of Pachinko, which is pretty fabulous. I looked at the trailer and I was a little confused because the men in the suits are not, I can't tell who's who by the tiny blips of footage that they're giving us. So I definitely can tell Sunja and I could tell Kyung-yi, but it's going to be interesting. And it's foreign language. So I think it's a Korean production for Apple TV. Correct me if anyone knows the answer to this, but that's really exciting. So anyway, the read along. This is another chunker, and as you can see from my system, I liked it a lot better than I disliked it. We also talked on Voxer, and I did a fairly good job of keeping up. I got about halfway through and then paused for a week for other buddy reads, and then had to catch up on a whole bunch. But this is the story of a family going through like 4 generations. We start at about 1900 and end in 1989. So it's a lot. And mostly we're in the 1930s, 40s for a good amount of time with the 3rd generation. And then we skip to the 80s towards the end for the 4th generation. Yes. And so you love a historical fiction family saga. You love a BIPOC author talking about her own culture. So this is set starting in Korea, North Korea, and then leads us to Japan. And as I said, 30s and 40s were under the occupied Korean peninsula, occupied by Japan, and the tensions there. And then in Japan, we are learning about how Japan treats its Korean citizens, said with a wink because they're not considered citizens. They're second class and very precarious as people in that economy. But we follow this family, especially the woman who is fighting to preserve a life for her family and a future for her children. So, and there's all sorts of secrets and struggles, and it was really, really good. The consensus of the group was pretty much that it starts out really, really good. For me, it starts out 5-star. I'm going halfway through, really excited. And then it may have been because I had to speed through the ending part, or it may have been the writing, since other people also reflected this. I think it may be the writing. We skip through 50s, 60s, 70s pretty quickly with just sort of glimpses of people and sort of less relevant or less close to the nucleus of the family characters. And so we sort of lose a bit of momentum and then come back into a different nucleus, if you will. And things sort of come home to roost. The chickens come home to roost at the end. So it got a little less satisfying towards the end and the ending, but it's still a really beautiful book. And here's an interesting thing. So it's not shameless self-promotion. This is an author talking about a book, and that's what you get on my channel. So when I started this book, and the first half especially, there's a sort of a very immersive quality and a very quiet, subtle quality to the writing that's like unassuming, sparse with details, but really sets the scene. And when I was reading this, I felt like it was the first time I had read a book that made me feel like the way I wanted readers to feel reading my book, if that makes sense. So when I was going through it, it was this like quiet, unassuming tone that it's not a knife in your heart, but it's like, how would I describe this? Let me think of the exact words. Devastatingly simple. That's kind of the feeling I got. So I was really excited to like feel like I had found something that was close to the mood and the tone that I have in my historical fiction trilogy, Remnants. So that was really cool to find. It's the first time. So yeah, so that was my first read along that I've actually done on BookTube, and it was a great success. So thank you to Gemma of Gem of Books for organizing that and for, welcoming us all into the Voxer group. And I love the people who I was interacting with and follow them. And some of them are participating in May of the Moderns, which is very exciting. So that was a 4.75, excellent book. Definitely recommend Pachinko. The next book on my list, if I don't have to catch up with comments here. Shannon has also read The Little Prince in English and French. Yes, so have I. I like this club. I like this club we're starting. Joe is here to say hello, everybody. I owe all my reads in April to this channel. Oh my goodness. Well, that's exciting. And here's to paying it forward. Oh, there we go. Apparently I couldn't see the last comment because I had downloads that were crowding the screen. Good to know. Welcome, Joe. Nice to see you. You'll be featured here. Don't worry. Next book. The next book was another buddy read. It's The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together by Heather McGhee. This was a buddy read with Courtney Ferreter. You can find her channel information down below. I think she's already gone over her talk about the book, maybe. So I'm going to play catch up here. Oh, Diaz in the house. Hola. Glad I caught you. Happened to be home from work. Lovely to see you. Another author, tuber, book tuber. Nice to see you, Dee. So what do I have to say about The Sum of Us? I was very excited. I had to wait a long time to get the paperback version of this because I can't spend $25 on hardcovers. So I was very excited to get this from a Black-owned bookstore here in Portland, Third Eye Books and Gifts, which are fantastic. And let's see, Courtney's approach or reception, I should say, reception of this book was a little ahead of me, I suppose, because she had heard a lot of the arguments, not a lot of, the main argument she'd heard of, and the main study to support things at the beginning of the book she'd heard of. And so she was kind of like, this is kind of old hat. And yet found a lot of interesting examples to educate herself throughout the book as well. But for me, this was a great example of books talking to each other. And I found a clearing in the distance. So when we're talking about 19th century Renaissance man Frederick Law Olmsted, someone who went to the South as a young whippersnapper before the Civil War, took a tour, wrote articles for a famous New York paper, and assumed the mantle of a neutral observer so that he would have credibility with both sides to write these articles, and was also anonymous. So that's a little complicated to begin with. But he had the same argument, that racism costs everyone. Basically, his argument was it corrupts the society in which it is operating, which is not unfamiliar. But I thought it was interesting. I was reading it at the same time as I was reading this with Courtney, because her arguments are much more focused on 20th century examples. And of course, the one on the cover and the one she brings up most often as a metaphor is draining the pool, which I found a particularly apt metaphor and very moving, which is that I feel like I've said these before, but this is my April wrap-up, so this is going to be my rapid reviews of these books. So I don't know if I've said this before. Sorry if it's a repetition for you. When the post-war economic boom in America had been used to expand the middle class and give people pensions and give people housing guarantees for loans as the GI Bill, and education like the GI Bill did, all these sorts of social contract services that everyone remembers learning about. I think I talked about this in a tag, that's why. I remember learning about the World War II post-war economic boom, the suburbs, the rise of all these economic benefits. I did not remember that as soon as that started happening, the civil rights demonstrations also started happening, because the marginalized populations, mostly African Americans participating in those protests, were not getting the access to those benefits. And so as soon as those demonstrations started having an effect and the Supreme Court started deciding, yes, separate but equal is not a thing, and striking down those decisions so that African Americans had access to those same benefits, what happened to those benefits? They drained the pools, right? They started saying, oh, well, we're taking this away now. Too bad. We're rolling up the ladder after us. So it's tragic, really. And so all these pools that got built in all these communities, public pools, as soon as they had to share them, the white people in the town said, I'd rather not have it than share it. And so that, it's another metaphor of shooting yourself in the foot. Well, that's not great. Slicing your nose off to spite your face, I guess, is a better metaphor, but lots of examples. There were some things, I did put some sticky notes in here where the argument feels like it wanders a little bit, and I'm not sure why. It says a point. It feels like it should lead to something else, and it doesn't go there. It just sort of turns left. And so I marked those pieces because I was like, why don't we address this thing? Because it feels like that's the background of the argument. So overall, very good examples, persuasive writing, a little bit of confusing parts, and a little bit of seen this in other places. So I gave this 4 stars. Definitely recommend it. It's on my bookshop for people who are interested in this topic. So there you go. We've got Leo in the house, dropping in late. May the 4th be with anyone who hits the like button today, because that's how we roll. And in case Katie Solitis sees this later, she is I don't know the phrase that I want to use, but she is conquering Instagram with her Star Wars memes today. So if anyone needs a little lift or a laugh, go to Katie Solitis's Instagram. She's fantastic, and she's doing all these like Star Wars things. And one of them is Happy Star Wars Day. You shall not pass something. And like she's like, how many nerddoms can I piss off with one meme? It made me laugh. This is the way. There we go. Insane. I don't know what that's referring to. Katie's memes? I think they're great. There we go. Thank you, JD, with it on the links here. In case you just dropped in, how many books did you read in April? I'm going to pop mine up in just a second. I'm getting to Strange Luck, which is the Joe featured one, which is over there. So I didn't get an overlay for this because I had it on the little iPad, but the iPad's over there. Okay, anyway, Strange Luck by A.I. Winters is the indie book that Joe and I decided to do for a swap. I read an indie book that was on his shortlist, and he read a trad pub book that was on my shortlist. His was a reread. Mine was a research read. So we all came out ahead. And let's see. A.I. Winters is a fantastic indie author. You'll find her on Joe's channel, Go Indie Now. So check that out down in the description. You'll also find the discussion of Strange Luck, which is a young readers a fantasy, portal fantasy about someone who is coming of age with a magical curiosity shop, and then she has to go to another world to save her father, and it's about facing up to your demons and realizing the power you have in yourself. So it was a good read, and definitely encourage you to listen to our talk about it, because we sort of ranged pretty far afield, and it was a really fun discussion on my channel. So we'll get to Joe's channel in a couple books. It's down on my list. Just catching up here. Jim says April has 5 books finished, and 1 was a picture book. I know there was a picture this readathon that was going on. I don't really read picture books, so did not participate in that one. JD is saying my books, hey, Whipple, squeeze this on advertising. Okay, Mary Poppins and the Low, Low Woods. I don't know any of those. Well, I do Mary Poppins. I don't know the first and the third, though. That's cool. What genre? Tell us the genre of the last one. It sounds like a thriller, the Low, Low Woods. Dee says, I read a quarter of a book. Hey, some Aprils were hard. What can I say? No shame. So I, to spoil the surprise here, read A Baker's Dozen. So we're about halfway through our books for today, or 2/3 through. And then I'll do the wrap up with the stats, which is my like new interesting thing for today. So the next question is average star rating. How did you like the books that you read? Let's dive into that. So after Strange Luck, I have the next book that I read. It was not a buddy read, but it was a Patreon book club read. Let me pop that in the chat. I have a banner, but I can also list that information so people can click on it. And in case you don't know, I have a Patreon that does bookish mail in postcard form every month, book club every other month, and book chats every other month. So we switch off and have a lovely discussion, which is where this came in. And the last one is the writer's room, the mastermind, once a month. So we'll see how that goes. So this was our book club pick for April, Where the Dead Sit Talking by Brandon Hobson, which is a Indigenous authored read. So another BIPOC pick for April. This is a book about someone as an adolescent in the foster care system, coping with some really troubling issues and the relationships, the encounters, the weird stuff that happens. And we had some ambiguous takes on the actual narrator of this, so it was very intriguing. Not really my style of book. It was like, to me, it felt like unreliable narrator, and it also felt like we're introduced to a person who's looking back on this adolescent period, but there's no difference between the voice that is reciting back then, blah, 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 and the voice that is the inside the mind of the kid himself. So it was not hopeful or encouraging because there was no difference. But I'd be very curious to hear other people's takes on this. We discussed it and were, interested, intrigued by the writing and the imagery, and definitely learning about the foster care system, but weren't sure where we were led to or what the message was by the end. So very curious to hear if anyone else has opinions on this one. That was our Patreon book club for April, and the June one is Creatures of Will and Temper for Pride Month. So there we go. And May's Patreon book talk is TBA. Hang on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see what it is in a little bit. The next book I have, let's do the question actually. So let me take this down and look at the question here. Average star rating. JD saying 4.75 average. That's pretty good. 2 5s and a 4. Excellent. Joe says mine is 4. No math needed. That's what I gave both books. Excellent. Jim's saying 5 books, all rated 4-star. Interesting. The Collector, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, Stormfront, A Dead End Job. That sounds like a Pratchett. And The Cayman, a picture book. All rated 4-star. Also easy math. Well done. Oh my gosh. Dusty Book Sniffers. Hi there. Nice to see you. Welcome to the channel. I read 18 books. Average star rating 3.75. Good morning from Australia. Wow. Very cool. JD's got a bounce. Stay classy. Oh, we'll pop that. Don't worry. Yes. So mine, just to participate in the discussion. Mine was, I had to do math. 3.87. So this is lower than March, but I read more books. So take that as you will, right? Still pretty good. Let me tell you quickly why the average was dragged down. It's a couple of books that were my mass market paperbacks that I just picked up for, I don't know, palate cleanser, right? So one was Night Play by Sherrilyn Kenyon, who's pretty reliable, but it was a 2.75. And then Catherine Coulter, who I used to like, and I picked this up because I saw it for $3. Fire Song, who I used to like, but this is a 2-star. There were so many things wrong with this. This is a 90s romance and a medieval setting, which I don't normally go for, but I don't know. I thought it would be a good, romantic in between all the heavy stuff. And it was not. There were so many problematic things in this book that is going straight to the bin. So that dragged my average down a little bit. So unfortunately, that was my experience this month, but also so many good books. So still pretty good. Leo says, I read 11, 2 were picture books, all pretty good. Have to do the math. And JD, 14 divided by 3, 4.6. We're doing math. We're doing math in the comments here. Watch out. Protect yourself. Protective equipment encouraged. All right. So those are the 2 lowest books. The next one is the other book that I read with Joe of Go Indie Now. So Cold Millions by Jess Walter. So he wrote a book called Beautiful Ruins a few years ago that got turned into a movie, very famous. And I think this was his second book after that. So not the follow-up, but the second book. And this was a 5-star read for me. It was already on my short list, so it wasn't a big stretch to, conclude that. But what might draw you into this book? How can I draw you into this book? Oh, look at all my tabs here. All the good quotes and stuff. Let's see. It's set in the Pacific Northwest. It's set in the early 1900s, like 1908, 1909. It's a historical fiction that deals with the Wobblies, the IWW, or Industrial Workers of the World Union, which was kind of like the Knights of Labor in that they accepted everybody. They did not stick to one industry in that way. They accepted everyone across industries, even people who were drifters and I think women as well. I'm not sure. I didn't check that, but very cool, very progressive for the time. And I'm really getting into this like 1900 to 1910 setting because Vera with the 1906 earthquake was set then, and I love that book. Women of the Copper Country was 1912, and the strike in Michigan. I love that book. So I think I'm getting on a trend here and enjoying these 1900s books. They're all fairly recent in the past couple of years. So the style, Joe had some things to say about the style. It was experimental in some ways, which he appreciated, and we had some talk about the publication implications of that. And the voice was cool, and the plot was like deftly handled so that there were lots of surprises, and like that was pretty cool. And yeah, just like a really well done novel. Joe thinks it could have been edited and it was a little long, but I really enjoyed all of it. The ending maybe a little. It was a choice. The choice was made about the ending and the epilogue, I'll say. But I appreciated it. So yeah, Joe and I agreed to disagree on that, but we both really enjoyed reading it, and the like adventure-ness of it was really fun. So we both tore through this in a weekend to be able to do our buddy read live. And you will find our live discussion on Joe's channel, and I will pop that video up after we are done going live. So definitely recommend 5-star read of the month. Do we have any other 5-star reads? Let's see. So after Cold Millions, I've got an overlay. Sometimes you have to just go for it. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Joe's saying incredibly well written, so vivid and well paced. Yeah. He does interviews. I was looking for some of his interviews on YouTube with Pacific Northwest venues and whatnot. So very, very interesting. Next up, I have the poetry. So I was looking for poetry to read, and I know Anita had suggested hers, but it came out late in the month. And so I went with one that I had on my own TBR already, which is Postcolonial Love Poem by Natalie Diaz. And this is written by an indigenous poet who is pretty famous now. This book was kind of a big deal. I didn't hear much about it on BookTube, but I definitely heard it on like book Twitter and stuff. And I gave this a 4.5, and I'm definitely going to have to listen to it again because listening is not my first favorite preferred way for poetry. I like to listen. This is the author reading her own work. So that is powerful, and definitely you get to hear it how she wants you to receive it. But there was a lot of stuff that was unfamiliar. And so for me, it helps me to digest information more if I have the visual and I can go back and look at it, which is not as easy to do rewinding on a on an audiobook. So I'm definitely going to listen to this again, maybe soon, because there were several pieces in here that definitely stuck with me. American Arithmetic is one, and I think that's actually available online if you go to like poetry.com or search American Arithmetic, Natalie Diaz. Yeah, there's some really, really powerful stuff in here. And here was the surprise. So post-colonial, like indigenous race relations, that kind of thing, I was definitely expecting. The love poem, I should have expected more, but I didn't. There's a lot of sex in here. There's a lot of lesbian sex imagery. So just like content, be aware. There's a lot of that going on. And as I was walking around town listening to this in my headphones, I was like, okay. It was kind of like the discussion we had during Pachinko, where there was like a couple sex scenes and a couple of the readers had listened to it in public, and one had even listened to it in her garden on like out loud on her phone instead of on headphones. And so she related a funny story about her neighbor probably hearing the sex scene that she didn't know was coming, which is pretty fantastic. So yeah, there you go. So just in case like you're listening to this in your back garden and you don't want anyone else to hear that without being prepared for it, there you go. I have prepared you. But yeah, definitely going to listen to this again. Might have to get a paper copy to like study it because it was really good. 4.5 stars, and I want to read it again because I think I'll probably bump it up with more. So that was fantastic. Let me move off this banner and put up the next one. Next question is just going to be, did you accomplish your April reading goals? Was that a star rating? Was that a number of books? Was that a book that you were reading with someone else and a buddy read? Celebrate those buddy reads, The next book I have to discuss. All right, well, Joe is telling us that Cold Millions suffers from Spielbergitis in his opinion. And if anyone is in the film genre and knows what that means, you'll get a little, not a spoiler, but a little taste of what we were talking about the ending. Hi, Mr. Vlandis. Thanks for coming by. What do I have left? I have 2 books left. So one is an overlay. Let's get this one up. And this is the one that is related to The Little Prince. So this is an audiobook that I listened to thanks to Libro.fm. And it's a nonfiction memoir, however you want to categorize that. Fox and I, An Uncommon Friendship by Catherine Raven. And this was my other 5-star read this month. Okay, so Milltown is sort of a social history memoir winding, and Fox and I is definitely like a nature memoir. So for anyone who is doing a springathon, which I think is happening during the month of May, I would definitely recommend this. It's the story of a field biologist, a doctor of biology, who is a former park ranger and also came from a difficult background, and I think is neurodiverse. So that is sort of like the place that it's coming from. And then what does she share with us? She shares with us her thinking about wildlife and her evolution of thinking about her own life in relation to the wild. And it's really powerful. So not only do you get lots of little bits of science, which I like because it's like sneaking the learning in, I don't know, like vegetables in spaghetti sauce, but it's also talking about our relationship with nature and how we're part of it and how we never seem to remember that. But also what we consider as wild and what we consider our duty to the wild, and our relationships with wild things and how they're different. She brings in The Little Prince. She also brings in Moby Dick. So Courtney, if you end up watching this, you who loved reading Moby Dick, I think you'd really enjoy this. She talks about Melville and his sort of manifesto in Moby Dick and what his life or his outlook might have been. judging by Moby Dick, which is like a big Darwinian tale about whales with a couple characters thrown in. But she relates her own life to this, and also The Little Prince with Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. So those two authors, those two works, were both sort of framing her own experience and her own discoveries in a beautiful way. So I haven't read Moby Dick. I have read Little Prince, so has Shannon and JD. And she talks about boxed animals versus unboxed animals when she talks about her fox and getting to know this fox on her property in Montana near Glacier National Park. And it's just beautiful. I learned about this book from Mary Weber O'Malley, who's a fantastic bookseller, free range, at large bookseller, whatever the title is. I'm out of practice with all those words. But she's from A Mighty Blaze, and one of her book hauls like over a year ago was with this book, and she said it was great. And so I finally got around to listening to it and really want to listen to this one again too. Or read it. I might have to get a paper copy of this one because it was really profound. If you have read Alice Henderson's books, who is also a field wildlife observer scientist who writes mystery novels, she incorporates science into thrillers and has like sort of like the plot tension and the mystery that to sort of drive you on. And Catherine Raven's nonfiction memoir approach to this is like, how would I differentiate it? It's like musing and gentle, but also quirky and kind of like you get what you see. What you see is what you get, because she's not interested in, it's gentle, but she's not making it gentle for you. It's obviously hard to explain, but it's a great book. 5 stars. Definitely recommend to like anybody. Humanity needs to read this book. That is my recommendation. Oh boy, what are we catching up on here? 13 comments that I haven't seen. I think Dee's no is about the Spielberg-itis, but let's see. Joe says, nope, got bogged down in the middle of a couple books. Need to pick it up in May. All right. I think I missed something. What book we were talking about here, but sorry. Oh, goals, reading goals. Got it. Sorry. Shannon says the only goal I set for April was to read romantic fantasy versus romance fantasy to see the differences in genre, but also read the book as part of the Tuber book club. That's right. Kent Sean, his book was the pick of the Tuber book club over on Books by Adrian's channel. So that was pretty cool. It's one book, one author, but I think it got like 4 shows out of it, which is pretty impressive. Go Adrian. That's really interesting. I hope you have a forthcoming video about the difference because I'm very intrigued. Dusty Book Sniffers. I was pleased with my April reads and only one that I rolled over in May. So all in all, an excellent month. Yay. Great job. Let me take this down so that you can see my thumbs up. There we go. Jim's books, reading and stuff. I'm 3 books behind on my reading goal for the year, aiming for 72. I had 5 books on my TBR and read 5 books, but 2 were not on the TBR. Oh, they snuck on. I feel ya. Yeah, I want to hear about the difference too. Bye, Joe. Gotta run. Take care, everybody. Happy reading in May. Shannon says, thoughts only from what I've read so far are romantic fantasy seems to concentrate more on the fantasy, with the romance as a close second and could be only one POV. Romantic fantasy. Okay, so it's more true to the fantasy genre with romance playing in like a subplot and tends to be one POV. Interesting. Oh, and Joe says, oh, real quick, if any of you booktubers want to do an indie book for a trad book swap with my channel, hit me up. Yeah, so you do like a little show swap and a book reading swap, and it's super fun. So there you go. D is saying my goal is 52 books. I'm on my goal. Excellent. Well done, D. Shannon says some books classified as romantic fantasy follow the typical 2 points of view with mostly romance as the main element. All right. Interesting. I still think you should do a video on this because you gotta show your examples so that we can like see which ones you're using as your concrete detail. If I can pull that out of my high school English. Okay, so we're almost to the end. If you've been counting, that is 12 books, and we have a baker's dozen, which means 13. But let me pop up mine. Did I accomplish my April reading goals? Yes. So let me show you the overlay here. Oh, let me scoot over so you can see, if you can see this. This is a reading goals tracker that I stole from Melissa at Fully Booked and put my own goals in. So research book. Oh, and here's where the little organized thing comes into play. I did my little stats here. Research books. So 3 of my baker's dozen were considered research books, which is 25%. Audiobooks. I had 3 audiobook reads this month, which is 25% of the total. Nonfiction was 5, so that's about 42%. Owned TBR was 7 out of 13, so that's more than half. That's pretty good. BIPOC authors, that was 5 out of 12, so 42%, pretty good. Ebooks, only 1, that was Strange Luck, and indie books, only 1, that was Strange Luck as well, so that's 8%. But really, I just want to make sure I diversify every one of these in the month. So I hit all of those targets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 goals per month. And I think this is only the second time this year that I've done it. So track record's not great, but I'm pretty proud of myself that I got all of those things in April. So there we go. Final book. Let's see. Thank you, Dee. Dee's clapping for me. Final book, the surprise bonus, is one that has been on my nightstand for a year or more. It's called Reading in Bed, and this is a special cover because it is no longer available. I looked for this cover, and it's been replaced with an owl on the cover. So this is signed by the author. He autographed it to me when I was there and bought this from him. It's by Brian Doyle, who is a well-loved but now gone Pacific Northwest author. He passed away from cancer a couple years ago. And he was a great speaker, an impassioned speaker from the Bronx. And that gives you a little taste of what it was like listening. He just had the run-on sentence made into an art form. And that is basically what this book is in book form. Brief, headlong essays about books and writers and reading and readers. And I've read a couple of these, not for a while. I read a couple of these essays because they're only like a page or two during my early BookTube videos when I wasn't sure what to do. And it's just because they're so funny. So I definitely turned down a lot of the corners here about things that would be funny to read. And if you can get a copy of this, I would recommend it. It's just like a middle-aged dude who's ranting about stuff, but also turns a lot of the rants into beautiful meditations about writing. And so it's very heartwarming. And so that's why it was on my nightstand for over a year, because I would just do 1 or 2 at a time and before bed when I was feeling like, I don't know, just put me in a better mood before I start dreaming, right? So Reading in Bed by Brian Doyle, and 3.75. There is a lot of ranting. There is a lot of run-on, but overall, I love that I have this and that he wrote me a message in there, and we had a little talk about New York City and inspiration when he signed it over. So really, really enjoyed this book and dribs and drabs over the years. Whew. Okay, so that is our Baker's Dozen. Congrats on hitting your targets. Thank you, Jim. This is the 1 month, April, my birthday month, I actually hit the targets. And May of the Moderns is going to be so focused on the readathon that who knows what'll happen in May. But let me make sure I say all the things that I want to say. I didn't go over coming attractions, so let me pop that one up for a quick second. Coming attractions, it's also down in the chat below. This week we've got Friday reading sprints, Saturday reading sprints. Friday it's after Shannon's productivity sprint, so it's 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Central. And Saturday it's after Jenna the Soul Writer sprint, so that's 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern for Jenna. And basically it's just to do reading or productivity writing if you need to. I was just on the Courtney Project sprints last night, but because I had already done like a short burst of writing and I hadn't gotten any reading done, and this is such a heavy reading month, if you don't realize, just look at my spreadsheet for May of the Moderns. I'm signed up for a lot of books. So I spent the first sprint reading and I muted and I just finished the book. So that was successful too. You will get to hear what book it was at the end of the month. But it wasn't a May of the Moderns read. It was a romance. And it was a lot better than the ones from April, let me tell you. So hopefully you can join in those Friday morning, Saturday morning for me sprints if you want to join and chat. I've already started collecting fun questions to ask in between. So hopefully we'll have like some delightful chat in between and, you know, hit our goals for May, because I like hitting goals. I don't know what that was. But thanks for coming by to watch today. And I hope you're having a great reading month for May of the Moderns. And that's all I got for you today. So have a lovely Wednesday. Thank you for watching this Wednesday wrap up.